Good day, class. In this video, we are going to continue the discussion of the history of Chinese medicine. From this video, we are going to study the detailed information of the history. There's one question that we didn't mention in the previous video: how to study the history of Chinese medicine. When you study Chinese medicine, we always need to focus on 3W. The history is a descriptive study, so we need to focus on when, what, and who, or by whom. So what happens, the time, what happens, when it what happens, by whom. So always remember these three aspects. And in this video, we're going to start from the ancient time. The origin of Chinese medicine. From ancient times to 2100 BC. This was the times that's before the written records of the history of China. You may be confused, that since it was before the written records of China, how do you know what happened at that period? So we're going to analyze from two aspects: archaeology and myth and legends. Archaeology is one of the most important approaches to study history. Yuanmou Man. Yuanmou is the area. It's named after the Yuanmou in Yunnan province. This early human being lived there in that area about 1.7 million years ago. That's the earliest human being in China. And from the cave of this Yuanmou Man, we know that at that time, 1.7 billion years ago, this early human being was be able to use a fire, because in the caves we found a 6 meter thick of the ashes. The use of fire is a significant improvement in human being and in human health. We're going to explain later. So we have been able to use the fire for quite a long time. The Lantian ape man and Peking ape man. Peking is the old saying of the capital of China, Beijing, because this skull was unearthed in Beijing, so it named after Peking ape man. From these ape men, from their living areas, we will know that these ape men will be able to use to make tools. That's very important for our needles later on. So these are very old periods, million years ago or more than hundreds, thousands of years ago. So we just keep in mind that the kind of human being has lived on this continent for a very long time. They will be able to use the fire. They were able to use to make tools. And then the stone needles. The stone needles, here are the samples of stone needles. You can see these are the sharp edges. That's from the making of the tool, the sharp edge. So these needles were the earliest form of acupuncture. And these needles, from the archaeology, from the technology of archaeology, they can test how long these needles has been used. So if we can trace back to 10,000 years, apart from stone needles, from the Neolithic age. Afterwards, we found bamboo needles, stone needles, and the needles from animal bones. So these are all the early human beings. They make tools. They make tools on purpose. They sharpen the animal bones to use as needles, and these needles become fossil. Now we can see all the original form of acupuncture. That's why we say acupuncture has been practicing for very long. We even have the evidence from 10,000 years ago. For example, the stone needles. However, we always say we have thousands of years because we have the written proof from the medical books at least for 2,500 years ago. And these evidence, some other evidence we can see from the reports, such as there's one on Earth skull about 5,000 years ago. On the skull, we can see the hole on the skull, a hole about 31 by 25 millimeter, the hole on the skull. And this is the early surgery 5,000 years ago. And we can see this patient at least has been alive for another 2 years after the surgery. The reason why we know is because around the skull, around the bones, we see the new bones growing around the bones. So in order to grow this thick, the patient must be alive for another 2 years. So from here, we will see that the development of the medical actually origin from very ancient times. Apart from the archaeology, we are going to introduce some myths and legends. These are some stories, and also these stories are very close related to the culture. So sometimes when you hear the stories, you may feel funny because if you don't have the cultural background, you will feel funny of this culture, of these stories. But doesn't really matter the reason why we need to introduce the story. No matter you believe or not, but you're going to know the names because some of these names we use these names in Chinese medicine, especially from the medical books. For example, one of the classic we have mentioned previously, 黄帝内经, 黄帝内经, the classic of the yellow emperor. Who is the yellow emperor? 皇帝. Huang yellow, Di is the emperor. Who is the yellow emperor? In the next few slides, we're going to introduce the herbal medicine. It's named after Shen Nong. Shen Nong, 本草经. That's the herbal medicine classic. Shen Nong. Who is Shen Nong? Yan emperor. Who is the Yan emperor? So we give you a brief background of these stories, then you will know what happened to those title of the books. So we're going to introduce 4 or 6 figures in the Chinese legends. The first one, Pan Gu. Pan Gu. This gentleman and 女娲, this lady. One gentleman, one lady. We're going to explain why the characteristic, what characteristic can reflect in the culture. Pan Gu, a gentleman. That's from the very ancient times. We believe that the earth, the human being, the universe is like an egg. Like an egg, you can't see inside. It was crowded inside, and after millions of years, Pan Gu were born in the eggs, and the eggs started to separate, and Pan Gu will grow in the eggs and become a giant man, grows bigger and bigger. He stands on the ground, he pushing the sky up, So that's how we have the ground and have the sky. That's from the story. 盘古 grows very quickly. He changed 9 times a day. And he become taller and taller. That's why nowadays we can see the sky very tall while we're standing on the ground. Because Pangu become very tall, he pushing the sky upwards. And eventually, when he passed away, his eye changed to the sun, and one of the eye become the sun, and the other one become the moon. His left eye become the sun, his right eye become the moon. His muscles become the mountain, his vessels become the rivers of the ground. Okay, so we're not going to discuss in details. The more we discuss, the more you feel funny they are. And no matter what's the stories, now we're going to focus on the left eye and the right eye. The left eye become the sun. The right eye become the moon from the story. Have you ever think of why in the story it explains that the left eye become the sun and the right eye become the moon? Why not operate? Why not the left eye become the moon, right eye become the sun? Have you ever think of what's the reason because of this? So this that is aligned with the yin and yang theory. In yin and yang theory, the left is considered as yang, the right is considered yin. When we compare with the sun and moon in future, when we study the basic theory, you will know that the sun is considered as yang, the moon is considered as yin. As you can see now, the legends, the story of the Chinese culture actually is in line with the theory, the philosophies that we use in Chinese medicine. The second person, 女娲. 女娲 she was a lady. She was a snake lady. She got a lady upper body and snake tails. She was from the Chinese culture. She was the lady god who created human being. She used the mud, the soil of and the mud to make the tiny human body, and she blows into the nose, and then the people become alive. And eventually she felt that it was too slow, so she used a whip, a rope to whip it on the ground, and the tiny mud go to the air, become the human body, the tiny human. So that's where the human comes from. As you can see from these two stories, one a gentleman, 盘古, one a lady, 女娲. Actually, these are from the Asian legends, the worship of man and the worship of female, of woman. And in the next few slides, when we discuss the hair care, we also will mention some of these characteristics. This is not only in Chinese culture, it also happens in the culture worldwide. The worship of male or the female depends on the period of time. The next figure, 神农. 神农, also called Yan Emperor. He was the god of the herbs. He also not human being. This is the statue of 神农. He got the human body like the buffalo horn. So as you can see, these are all not human beings from the stories. He realized he feel very sorry that human beings suffer from diseases. So he tastes all the herbs and he keep records of the indications of the herbs, and written as 神农本草经, the one we're going to introduce in future, 神农. And one day, he adds one herb. That herb will cause the damage of intestine, and he couldn't have in time to drink the detoxic tea. That's how he passed away. So that's from the story, Yan Emperor. The next one, Huangdi. These four are important in our not theory, but important in our history. Because in Chinese medicine, in acupuncture, we use a lot these names. Huangdi. Huang is yellow. Di is emperor. So the yellow emperor. The yellow emperor, although the image here is a human being, from the legend, yellow emperor is also not normal human being. He got the human body, but he got 4 faces. These 4 faces, facing front, facing back, facing left and right. So he can see 4 directions at the same time. He also in charge of the thunder, of the lightning. So as you can see, all these legends, all these stories in the legend, these are all not human beings. But why 黄帝内经, the classic, why named after 皇帝? Why they are named after 神农, who's 皇帝? Because these figures are so famous in Chinese culture. So once one day I write a book, but no one knows who's Doctor Who. But I want people to read my book. So what I want to write, for example, now I write a book. I says this book is from, for example, from President Donald Trump. Everyone want to read because everyone want to read what this funny guy says. Okay, so similar to this, when a person writes a book, they want to name after famous figures, especially in the history or in the legends, and people will have the curious what 皇帝 says in this book. What's 神龙 opinion in this book? They name after these, and also from these stories, we will understand these books, these classics, were not from 皇帝, were not from 神龙. This is just a story. 渔夫 and 岐伯, these two are the officers of 皇帝. 皇帝is the emperor, so he got officers. He got 2 officers in charge of the human health. In 黄帝内经, our classic, the whole book was written as mostly, not only these 2, but mostly these 2 officers' discussion with the 皇帝. So 皇帝 will says, what happens to one situation? The 渔夫, the officer, will answer the 皇帝. In this situation, the population, the people need to do what kind of stuff, how to explain, and need to do what kind of stuff to treat the diseases, and the dialogue will record this and then become 黄帝内经. That's where our theory come from. All our theories come from 黄帝内经, come from these discussions between 渔父、岐伯 and the Yellow Emperor. When you see the Yellow Emperor and the Yan Emperor, these 2 emperors is not the one in the history, but in the legends, these stories. That's also why sometimes you will see especially some literature in Chinese, they quote that the Chinese people are the descendants of Yan and Huang emperors. Who are Yan and Huang emperors? That's 神农 and 皇帝. So these are all stories. In Chinese medicine, in our classics, we use a lot of these names. So it will be better if you knew these names. Otherwise, you will confuse what's Qi what's Yu Fu, and how Huangdi and when did Huangdi write a classic. These are all from stories. Since we are studying the history of Chinese medicine and acupuncture, we pick some information from the history that's related to the healthcare. So the residents will affect our human health. That's because where you live going to affect your health. That's the environment. For example, firstly, the human being live on a tree, the caves, and then to the human buildings. So these are improvements for the environment. For example, from the animal attack to avoid animal attack, from the cave for the human buildings. It can help us to avoid the dampness, the bad environment such as the dampness going to affect our health. So that's the development of the residents. The clothing, from naked to dressing clothes, from dressing the clothes made from the animal skin, made from linen. These are the developments of the lifestyle, because that also can protect the human being from the coldness, the food, and the use of fire. The food, the use of fire can help the human being from eating the food from raw food to cooked food. From the cooked food, we get better nutrition, we get a better hygiene that can benefit the human health. And also the use of the fire can help to avoid the cold, to keep away from coldness, and also can help to protect from the animals. Exercising, 导引 exercise or physical exercise or the breathing exercise are very important in Chinese medicine. So how to keep health, exercise. So these are all can be seen from the ancient times and from the archaeology discoveries. The marriages also related to the human health, especially the marriages that are related to such as the matriarchal clan commune and patriarchal. So sometimes they focus on the female, sometimes they worship the male. That's why in the previous slides when we discussed the story, the legend, there's one male, one female, the 盘古 and 女娲. That's from the worship of the man and woman. This is determined by the who dominates in the economy. So if you are interested in this field, you can read some historic books on the marriage. The marriage, the one thing we need to mention here is something related to human health. Is the marriage within the groups or with the siblings. That's the big improvements in human health. That's from the development of marriage. That's the marriage between the parents and the descendants are not allowed, and then the marriage from within groups, within tribes, and between different tribes, the marriage between different tribes will have a better or stronger descendants that can benefit the human health. This is the developments from the marriage. Medicine. At that time, we don't really see any medicine knowledge, but the medicine, most of them might from the mistakes of eating. So sometimes people eat something by mistakes, and then accidentally some diseases will be relieved. And after the repeated phenomena, people will have the experience of certain medicine or certain herbs can use for certain disease. This happens similar to acupuncture and moxibustion. Specifically, the moxibustion, the emergence of moxibustion also can be a result of the use of a fire, because in moxibustion we need a fire. If there's no fire, if a human being cannot use fire, we won't be able to use moxibustion. We have to say that at that time, at the early times, the human being may not have the knowledge of acupuncture and moxibustion. But for example, if they were hit by the stone accidentally, and afterwards, some area of the human body, for example, the elbow, close to the elbow, was hit by the stone, and all of a sudden, the joint pain disappeared. After the repeated phenomena, people will have the experience that the area close to your elbow may help to relieve the pain. So next time someone else got elbow pain, they may use the stone to hit the area. That's the early form of acupuncture from the stone needles. And moxibustion is the use of a fire. When you boil at home, when you set a fire, the ashes or the small fire may, may accidentally burn the skin, and all of a sudden some discomfort relieves. That's the early form of moxibustion. And external treatment methods, these are mostly related to the medicine used externally. These, we don't have records of these, but these external treatments, we still can see in some tribes in China. In some tribes, they keep the very old culture. They still use the herbs in the wild, and they grind into meshes. They apply on the skin. This also you also can see some in African countries. So these are something related to the health in the history. The purpose of this video, for all these stories, we aim to answer the question: where does Chinese medicine come from? Is it from the sages, the witchcrafts, or the animal instinct? So from the stories, from the archaeologies, we will understand that Chinese medicine is not developed in one day or one person. It developed as the human being develops, and it develops from the experience of human being. This also can be evidence from the development of the tools such as the stone needles, the animal bone needles, to the bamboo needles. These developments is not achieved in one day. It was achieved in a very long period as the human being, as the development of the human being, as the knowledge accumulation of human being. So apart from this, there are some other influences. For example, some people will argue that the medicine originated from sages. This opinion, they misunderstood that the medicine, the truth, and the legends. The legends, they They use the legend as the truth. For example, the one we mentioned, 盘古 or 皇帝. So they think 皇帝 is a sage, a wisdom man, a god. That he introduced the medicine to human beings. But that's just not true, because as you can see from the story, 皇帝 is a figure from the legend. 皇帝 got a human body, 4 faces. That's not a sage. So that's the story. The second opinion, that medicine originated from witchcraft. I have to admit that the witchcraft and medicine, in some certain stage, they mix. So from the timeline, the medicine, and after the development, the witchcraft, they practice together, the medicine and witchcraft. And from 2,500 years ago, from 黄帝内经, from the about 2,500 years ago, from the classic. In the next video, we're going to study the classic. From the classic, we separate the witchcraft and medicine. We don't use any witchcraft. We don't use any spiritual in the medicine. We only keep the medicine. Okay, that's the medicine. We discontinue the witchcraft. I have to admit that in certain stage, that Chinese medicine and witchcraft were combined. This is very similar to other traditional medicine. They have the spiritual perspective, but 2,500 years ago, from the 黄帝内经, we separate. We discontinue the witchcraft. We discontinue the spiritual perspective. We only keep the medicine. But why medicine is not originated from witchcraft? This opinion, they misunderstood which one comes first, medicine or witchcraft. Witchcraft is a person who practices witchcraft. It's a professional. Profession happens after accumulation of the economy of the society. That's very similar. A doctor, you have to be a human being first. After the economic development, you can specialize in health. You become a professional doctor. You don't work for other works. You only practice health. You only practice for medicine. Then become profession. Witchcraft also similar. They become profession. That's after medicine. Medicine developed from very early as a human being, and after the accumulation of the economy, some people, they don't have to work physically. They can be a profession of witchcraft. Then they can practice. So as you can see from these timelines, the medicine happens before the witchcraft, which why we says this is also not correct, because the medicine, this opinion, they misunderstood witchcraft. They think witchcraft before the medicine, or at least at the same time. That's not true, because the medicine happens before the witchcraft. The third opinion, medicine originated from animal instincts. This is partly true. As a human being, we also consider as animals. We have animal instincts, but this is not experience. As you can see, the animal instinct, you can't pass on from generation to generation. You will learn as this animal, you can't teach others. So that's also, and the other reason is also the animal instincts, there will be no theory. things. For example, the dogs at home, they knew what to do, they knew what not to do. They don't know why. They can't make the things out of they can make the theory out of things. So that's also not true. The homology of medicine and food. This is just 100% true. This, especially for Chinese herbal medicine. Many herbal medicine and foods are similar. We use food as medicine. That's why we have food therapy. But although this is 100% true, this statement didn't answer the question, where does the medicine come from? Because you said medicine and food, they are the same, that's true. But our question is, where does the medicine come from? You can say from the food, but the question will become, where does the food come from? So this statement doesn't answer our question, where does Chinese medicine come from? So these four inferences are not correct. So just in a summary, the Chinese medicine, the acupuncture knowledge, is from the development of a human being, the accumulation of human beings' experience, and later on it was summarized into theory. Thank you for your attention. In the next video, we're going to introduce some of the philosophies